I'm Bea Bonafini and I'm doing the Art Explora cross-residency program in Malte.
So glad to meet you. First question, where are we?
We're in a little hidden part of Valletta. It's where the old fishing huts are, and it's also one of the swimming spots in the city. But it stayed pretty much the same. It's also the entrance of one of the ports. I was invited here by Eugenio Viola, the Italian curator. My work has often looked at the cross-fertilization of cultures across the Mediterranean, mythologies that have been shared, the collective unconscious, symbols, archetypes, and so on. I'm Italian and I've traveled quite extensively around the Mediterranean, but it's my first time here in Malta, bang in the heart of the Mediterranean where there's been so much passage right from the Phoenicians onwards, and it's a place where still you have migration happening from North Africa, from other places, and integrating with contemporary life. So it's really interesting for me to see that as an artist who works with fragments that are pieced back together. I started the production trying to be as open as possible. It was about a week after I arrived. So I'd seen something, but I was still researching sites as I was producing. So I tried to let the production flow and allow my kind of absorption of what I was seeing feed into the work as naturally as possible.
How long did the residency last? When did you start to work on this?
The entire residency was a month long. I started working on these in my second week. I think of my work often in connection with other works and with other materials. So this is not necessarily the finished piece. It will then be complemented by the way it's installed, by the material it's installed on. So right now they feel like they've been carved from stone, which I really like. But I'd like to emphasize perhaps some of the blues and the turquoises that I initially wanted to see.
It's the first time you work with this kind of material.
Yeah, I chose glazes that were more opaque and mineral in texture so that the final effect was almost like a washed out color with a salty mineral finish that feels really rough. I sprayed them, so I didn't do any dipping. They're new techniques for me, so they were all experiments. In the tails, they're almost carved with little gestures, with little marks, like some of the decorations that you find at the entrance of the Neolithic temples. Whereas the inside is much more almost like the skeleton of a fish or the inside of an old boat. They use traditional lutsus here. They're the traditional fishing boats, which are very colorful and have these two eyes at the front, which make them more anthropomorphic.
It's crazy because we can also find a lot of your previous work in those work. All around the Méditerranée, there are like a strong connection. You feel that also?
Yeah, definitely. In the end, the body of water that makes up the Mediterranean is one whole body, and it travels without borders from one shore to the next. I think this is definitely a connection also between the human and the non-human, where bodies can become a wave or can become a seal tail or a shrimp or a boat or a human body again.
Why did you want to brought us here specifically in this part of the island?
This is one of the parts of the island that reminds me most of Gozo, with its really natural beauty and the collaboration between humans and nature, with the salt pans being right on the edge of the water. And now that they're out of use, it starts being reclaimed by the sea. So you see a lot of geometric forms that would have been man-made that are starting to become more and more organic, starting to take more organic shapes. And so I like this reclaiming aspect. Also, the formation of the limestone here has been carved, so you get these wave-like effects. The sea is really spectacular, and you get, in this period of time, you get all the spring blossoms and the Mediterranean flora on top of the cliffs. There are two kinds of limestone that are used a lot here, and one of them is very honey-colored, and it's soft and it's easy to sculpt. And actually the way the ceramics turned out with the glazing and the color of the stone meant that actually they look much more like some carved limestone that you would find on the edge of the sea.
Why is it important for you to take the time to do some residency in your career?
For me, it's a time to be open like a sponge. I absorb my surroundings in a way that I don't do when I'm in my kind of normal everyday environment in the city in which I live. But it's also the time I have to experiment and be open to some failures and just push my practice in new ways. Chasing deadlines, having shows coming up, and being in the studio, it becomes a really beautiful, repetitive practice, but one that also needs time to breathe and go in unknown directions and just play. So a residency like this, especially ones that don't require you to produce something at the end, or that don't have an exhibition, I think relieves some of that pressure and allows you to go into unknown directions much more playfully.